Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the backyard at Dingle. I suppose the story behind the backyard was, as you all know, I was a producer, like yourselves. Sold the business before the bank did. But the reason I did was I didn't know enough. So one of our aims and passions was to create a space for you guys to learn from other members of the industry, experts, about keeping your business, and I say sustainable. There's two sustainables. There's climate change and there's financial. So you're all very welcome. We've got a long day ahead of us. I hope you enjoy it. All the backyards are on the board, so you can dip in and dip out. And this is being streamed today, so have I all got your permission? Yeah, camera's facing me, so. So anyway, look, before we kick off, okay, anybody wonder what these are? We got an award. For exactly what we're going to do today. So you're in for a treat because we have 23 and 24 Supreme Champion in conversation. Kate Ryan, whom you all know from what she writes about, and Conor. Conor is, I always find interesting. And it's all about zero waste with Conor. His kitchen's run on a zero waste policy. I think, in actual fact, the flowers that are on the tables are then dried and made into tea. Kombucha. That's a word I didn't know 17 years ago. Anyway, look, I'm not going to delay you any longer. We're all in there. Any questions, our team are around the whole site to give you a helping hand. Enjoy your time here. And hopefully, if you just go away with one little nugget, I always say if I go to a convention or a seminar, I only need one piece of information. And remember that after Blas, which is probably in 30 years' time, we won't answer emails. So, look, good luck. Kate, Conor, thank you. I love the book. Anyway, thank you.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Blas 2024. We're opening this, Conor. It's quite exciting. Woohoo! So, as Artie rightly said there, I hope to have a candid chat with my fellow Irish Food Producers Champion. I was very honoured to gain the award last year. Conor received the award this year. If you can indulge me for just a couple of minutes, I just want to introduce this man as fully as I possibly can because I've been a bit of a fan for quite some time. So who is Conor Spacey? He is a chef of more than 30 years' experience. He's Ireland's leading zero waste food champion, and his relentless championing for the better use of all the food we buy, cook and consume by actively reducing waste all along the food chain is an issue of utmost importance for everyone because we all must eat. In 2023, he released his first book, Wasted, of which there will be some limited copies available to buy later on. Immediately, the book was widely considered to be a groundbreaking primer for domestic and commercial kitchens to rethink their approach to food waste by finding ways to eliminate it completely. Through his work with organisations such as Food Space and as co-creator of the Chef's Manifesto, which is a global network of chefs committed to finding better solutions to the global food system, founded in 2017, he shows that with applied skill and creative thinking, a zero-waste approach to food in hospitality settings is not only achievable, but cost-effective and opening a new and exciting culinary lexicon for both chef and diner. That is expanded further through his work amongst zero waste with the UN SDGs, in particular the global campaign #BeansIsHow, which aims to produce or increase bean consumption globally by 2030. Yeah. But also his most recent project, which we'll talk about later on, which is really inspiring, is work that he only started 9 months ago in Gambia in West Africa. It started with a single nugget of an idea to install a fresh water well in a community. And to date, there have been 16 wells installed in just 9 months, which services a community of 30,000 people with fresh water. There's so much more that Conor is involved with. He is such an inspiring speaker, and I hope we can get all of that across today in the short time that we have. All of this, and yet if you were to ask him, Conor would describe himself modestly as a chef. He is an inspiration. He is a food champion. And although today Gambia might seem like as far away from Dingle as possible, what Conor's work shows, and what we will dig into today, champion to champion, is how transformative the power of a single idea can be. Plant a seed, build a well, reduce waste, eat more beans, use what's around you. Ladies and gentlemen, my pleasure to introduce you to the 2024 Blas and Heron Irish Food Producers Champion, Conor Spacey.
Wow, thank you. That's a very flattering intro.
You're very welcome. So first of all, many congratulations, Conor. I know from first-hand experience what an honour it is to be named the Irish Food Producers Champion, seen as it's voted for amongst the network of Blas producers. What does the recognition mean to you?
It's amazing. It was amazing when Artie rang and told me. I was a bit like, "What, really? Are you sure it's me you meant to be ringing?" You know, because it's for me it's huge because it's from producers, and that to me is from a chef's point of view. I always say this to people: without producers, without Irish food, you've nothing. You know, you can't like we're the caretakers of Irish food. So we're the in-between people that work with Irish producers to showcase the food without complicating it, to showcase it to consumers how great the island of Ireland is and how fantastic the food and the food producers are. So, and that's just something I don't know, I've just always been like that. It's not, you know, I'm 35 years cooking. It's a long time. And that's just how it was. It was always about, you know, wherever you're situated, talk to your producers, be it everything from horticulture, dairy, livestock, condiments, every bakers, every producer of food, it's your responsibility to work with them in wherever you are on the island of Ireland or on the entire island of Ireland. So yeah, to get that was just like, wow, it was a real pinch me moment, I have to say.
Oh, it's wonderful. And I think it kind of speaks as well, as you were kind of saying there, we're in a very fortunate position in Ireland that there is virtually nothing that we can't grow or produce here, maybe not coffee or chocolate, and I know tea has struggled, but, you know, that we're very fortunate in that we are bounteous in that way, that we have everything that we need, all the right ingredients to make the right ingredients to produce incredible food.
Yeah, we're extremely lucky. And I know, and as you mentioned, I work in many different countries and traveling and so on and so forth. And I'm very lucky to be able to do that. And when I go to any other country, we are the envy of other countries because of our food, you know, and that's everything that we, you know, it's not just our dairy and livestock, which we're probably most famous for abroad, I mean, but it's everything that we can produce and everything that we grow and how we do it. And I always think, I always think consumers or chefs looking in and seeing this great produce, I always wonder, do they realise the amount of work that farmers, growers, producers do? You know, while if you're buying something in a market, in a shop, whatever it might be it a jar or something, be it a vegetable, be it milk, cheese, whatever it might be, I know people go, oh, it's really, really tasty, and I go, yeah, it is. As in, but did you know?
Yeah.
These farmers are working 7 days a week. They're up to crack of dawn. They're the last to bed. They're doing all this work, you know. And I think that like people need to understand and appreciate the amount of work that goes into it.
Well, it's the effort, isn't it? It's the effort, it's the vocation, it's the labour of love or otherwise. And I think that's probably what drives your zero waste kind of ethos as well, isn't it? Is that you recognise that effort, and therefore it's unconscionable to allow any of that to go to waste.
100%. And it's about, and it is that, like if people say, why are you so concentrated on zero waste? There is different reasons, you know, like from a business point of view, margin and profit, it makes perfect sense. But also it's about the amount of work. If you connect to your food, and I think in today's busy lifestyle, a lot of consumers don't have connection to food, and we see food not being sold at its true cost. and people not realising what goes into it, you know what I mean, and the amount of work that goes into it. And once you realise how hard people work to get that food on your table or in your kitchen, wherever it might be, it's a sin. You can't waste any of it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like, why? I always say to people, would you open your wallet and throw a $5 in the bin? They go, no. I said, well, why are you throwing the food out then?
Yeah.
You know, it's that kind of trying to connect people to understand the value of it.
Yeah, the power of the single idea, which is something we touched on before, and I think it's that simple idea, reducing food waste, is a great example of a galvanizing kind of idea that people can just, there's no way to kind of move the logic aside of how good an argument that is. But in terms of kind of like the power of a single idea, Blas na Heron, I think, is also a really good example of that. Awards for recognising Irish artisans just didn't exist before Blas na Heron. And every year since then, the Blas ecosystem, as we like to kind of think of it, has grown to include an incredible all-island community of people that includes supports, training, discussion, as well as obviously delicious things to eat as well.
100%. And I've often over the years spoke to Artie about this as well, how Blas works for me in this industry. So for us in day-to-day job within food space and so on, like, we work on the island of Ireland. We're not just in one area, so we have many different cafes and all throughout. And the Blas Index, as I call it, is where I can pinpoint each location as to who's doing what, and look at and go, okay, here's someone producing fantastic chutneys or cheeses or whatever, because we always try to work on the island of Ireland, so we have many producers or growers that are, we're buying their food no matter where on the island of Ireland, but it's also about getting into localities, and Blas is huge for that, because it really it sets a standard, but I think it gets the producer's voice out there more. Yeah. Because a lot of the listings within Blas, unless I'm driving around in different counties asking people and stopping people and asking them, I wouldn't know. And to me it is about champion smaller scale producers. We all know the big brands and the whole lot, and it's not about that. It's about really getting in and doing your homework. I'm talking as a chef now, or as a buyer, whatever you want to call it. It's really about getting in and doing your homework and understanding what's going on in the communities you're working in, and getting in there and supporting them.
So talk to us a little bit about Food Space, which is a catering company in effect, but tell us a little bit about it, because it has a very particular ethos and way of working, doesn't it?
Yeah, so it started, it's 9 years, January, I think, it's eight and a half, whatever, 8.5, 9 years now, which is flown by, and we started with it with our first. So what contract catering basically is, I hate the phrase canteens, but we do work-based catering, right, for different types of clients around different sectors now. So we're feeding lots of people every single day, and our first one started in Donegal town 8.5, 9 years ago, and the idea behind it was not only is that the business, it was about how do you do it right. So it was the experience of working within other contract caterers I'd worked in before. I'd worked for myself for 10.5 years as well before that, and I kind of knew what was going on in different areas, and I knew where the Irish food producers were, and I knew they needed to be showcased to consumers. I was trying to join the dots. So the idea was, okay, every community we go into, we have to buy within that community. Now, it's not about buying something for the sake of buying it because it's in the community. It has to be at a certain standard. It's not like I'm going to buy that, no one likes it and it tastes terrible. It's not about that, obviously. It's got to be a great product, but it's also showcasing it and then ensuring that your eaters, customers, are aware of it and aware that it's in their area. And Donegal was a good case in point, because it's Donegal town is a small enough community, and it's a large agricultural community as well. We learnt a lot there, unbeknown the effects it was having, like by using local veg, local bakeries, local butcher. I remember, like a year maybe into it, his shop sales had increased by 20-30%.
Wow.
Because the amount of people were eating with us every day were going to his shop on the high street. He took on another employee and all because of it, and then we grew together. Then I was getting more into the bonnet and going, what have you got that you can't sell? Is a certain cut like of beef or lamb or whatever it is. Like, okay, well, we'll buy that. There's no point in us buying something everyone else is buying because you have an income for that. And that got me thinking then about, okay, so this is something that works. So Donegal was like a test. And then as we expanded, so we've 16 cafes across Ireland now, and we're in London and Liverpool and Manchester. And so it's expanded a lot. So there's over 20 places now between here and the UK. But the same ethos applies in each area. So it's about getting really in with the community, but understanding what that producer, farmer, grower, whatever it is, what it's about communication and working with them. So, and a good example, as I was talking to you, was a farm I visited, actually up in Donegal last month, and a vegetable grower. Yeah. Anyway, I wanted to get this stuff in, and the stuff is fabulous, and so on and so forth. And he was like, well, so what do you want me to grow then? And I was like, what do you mean? I want to buy what you have. And he's like, oh, okay, because most chefs or people from that background come in and say, can you grow this for me? And I'm going, that makes no sense. I want what you have in the ground. When the harvest is over, it's over.
Yeah.
You know, and I'll see you next year. Or like another one that I'm working with, this organic farmer, and he has about 5-6 produce. This is in a new place we just opened, and he has 5 or 6 different crops. And he said, look, at end of October, November, I'm only going to have one crop. I'm only going to have kale left. And I was like, well, cool. Well, then it's kale on the menu every day. So it's not about, and it's trying to showcase. And our chefs then are going, because I go to them and go, this is all you have. You do a menu, but this is all you have. Right. You know, so it's really trying to get in and showcase Irish food, Irish producers, but working with them. How can we help? So if you're a buyer, if you're a supermarket, a hotelier, a restaurant, you have a virtual sack of money that you're spending. And I don't get the idea of the old habits of picking up a phone and ringing a big distributor and going, Harry, can I have a pallet of this and a pallet of that, hanging up? You know, because it's easy. Yeah. Like that's like, I'm always going, that's wrong. You have this money, you need to spend it within the community where everyone benefits. And that's the whole ethos behind Food Space.
That's the key, isn't it? It's where everyone benefits.
Yeah. Cheers.
It is a very important fundamental point as well. And also, not just from the producer's point of view, but you're kind of, from a diner's point of view within the food space outlets, you're kind of reconnecting eaters, and I love the fact that you refer to them as eaters, not consumers, with the beauty and the bounty of seasonality, true seasonality, and then also the chefs get to really kind of flex their creativity in the kitchen as well. So, but I mean, Food Space is a big organisation, and you know, you find a way to engage with community of Blas producers and other non-Blas community kind of members as well. It's not always the biggest that is going to get the contract, is it? It can be the smallest as well. How do you hope that maybe what you're doing at Food Space then can influence the buying decisions or the buying behaviours of other larger food organisations?
And it's back to that piece about communicating with food producers of whatever type of food it is they're producing or growing. And it's about understanding how it works for them. So as food producers, farmers, growers know, it's a 7-day-a-week job, right? So when I'm talking to people that we want to get the product, it's not about me going, well, I want a delivery on a Tuesday, I want one on a Thursday, I want it at this time, and I want a pallet of that. It's not about that. It's going, can you take time out to do a delivery? Probably not. That's a lot of time to do that, and it's about understanding, especially small scale. They're cottage industries. It could be one employee, it could be 2 employees, very much a family orientated, and it's about understanding how their day works and working within that. So we would have lots of people we work with and we source stuff from that don't have what I call wheels. They don't have the facility to deliver, you know, and I get it. And that doesn't determine whether you buy off them or not from a wholesale. It's about going, well, I know a guy who's delivering to me every Wednesday and he's driving by your house or your warehouse or whatever it might be. So I'm going to call him to come in and stop off you, pick up your order and bring it to me. So it's about working within the boundaries of the food producer. Yeah. Rather than going, as it's habit, old habit would be, oh, well, I could buy it off another guy and he has a 40-foot lorry coming with 90% of my product. It's not about that. It's about really supporting Irish food, Irish producers, and going, where do you have problems getting your food to me? And it could be wheels on the ground, it could be time issues, whatever it might be, going, okay, so let's go solve them. If you can't deliver to me, but I can get someone to pick it up, is that okay? And they're like, yeah. And then it's also about getting in, when you get into bigger companies, there's red tape and there's, there's like, oh, I want 90 days credit, 100. And it's kind of like, oh, it's like, what suits you?
Yeah.
Cash is king. You've got overheads, you've got bills to pay. You can't be waiting for me to be 90 days, 120, whatever, 60 days. So it's like, how frequent? And so it's about understanding them. And how and what support they need.
And I think as well, there's probably like a spin-off of the Blas network within that as well. If you're in an area like you've just opened in Kilkenny.
Kilkenny, yeah.
So if you're in an area like Kilkenny and you're trying to kind of figure out, right, well, who's around, and you've a mixture of types of producers. Using the Blas index, as you refer to it, if you have a smaller producer and a slightly larger producer, can they work together? There's more likelihood that they're going to trust each other because they're all part of the Blas network in a way.
100%. And it is that. It's about connecting and going, do you know so-and-so down the road? They have this cheese that I want. It's a one or two person there. They can't get out to me. Can you drive by? And they don't. No one says no. You know what I mean? Because it's a family of food producers. They're very much about support.
Yeah.
So it's like, yeah, of course I will.
Yeah.
You might have one or two to say no, and I go, well, you kind of need to.
Yeah.
And then you do. You don't take no.
We're kind of running short on time, and I do want to do a quick Q&A. But before we stop chatting there, Conor, I do want to maybe touch on the work you're doing in Gambia there a little bit. So in as fast a pace as you can possibly manage, Can you give us a bit of an insight snapshot, the work that you're doing in Gambia and why and what the future goal is as well?
So very quickly,
yeah.
I'll talk forever. So yeah, Gambia, I always wanted to do, all I know is food, okay? So that's all I know. And I do a lot of work with NGOs and different governments and so on. And I was and always is disgusted of the whole thing about writing big checks to underdeveloped countries, chucking money at it and it never getting to the people. It never gets to where it needs to go. And looking at the UN index of poorest countries, Gambia is number 3, the third poorest country in the world. The first and second one are also in Africa. And basically, I was doing a pop-up in London less than a year ago, and a guy I met there who was eating, has this fantastic charity called Waste to Wonder. He's like 30-odd years, and what he does is he upcycles or recycles correctly. Like, you work with large corporations that, for tax reasons, refurbish office blocks every 5-6 years, whatever. That furniture meant to get recycled and it wasn't. He set up a charity that for the same expense, basically, he was shipping this out right across Africa, like 30-something countries he's working in, and he was kitting out hospitals, schools, all this stuff with great stuff. And then the nugget was, he is set up to give carbon credits back to these huge companies. So if you're these big corporations, carbon credit is massive. It's a bit like Bitcoin. It's virtual.
Currency,
it's a currency, but big corporations need it because they have to reduce their carbon footprint. They've all got targets. So we got chatting, and he already had all the logistics and working with a very reputable charity in Gambia. And I was like, well, let's just do it. And he's like, okay. So we went out, and when you go to a place like this, you have an idea, especially on the island of Ireland, right? We have an idea what poverty is, and there is poverty in Ireland. But there's different scales of poverty. And when I went there, he kind of set me up and said, this is not... Be prepared for what you're going to see. Yeah. And I went out and, we went into the city first, the tourist areas, they call it. And that's like anywhere, big golden sandy beaches, hotels, pubs, restaurants, the whole lot. And I was going, okay, so when are we going out? And he goes, right, well, tomorrow morning, it's all big 4x4 Jeeps. There's no infrastructure, there's no roads, no paths, there's nothing. So you're half an hour outside the city, and you're into, they're villages, they're tribes in each village, and each village has a different dialect and so on. Villages range from 200 people up to about 2,000 was the biggest one we were in, which is a town, really, a small town. And there's nothing. There's no electricity, there's no water, there's no food, there's no sanitation. They're living in mud huts. And I was going, we needed to rethink, how does this work? Because if there's no food, what's the point in having a cookery school? So the idea was to get wells in first, because water is life, as they say. So through corporations and sponsorships, these solar panel borehole wells, what they're called. So they're solar panelled. They go right under the ground. Some villages have these old wells, these old hand wells, but it doesn't drill deep enough, so the water's contaminated,
right.
and it's quite a high salt content. It's a coastal country,
yeah.
So it's only fit for washing. You couldn't cook it or drink it. So we got these in, and that's ongoing. That's not going to stop. We're at 35,000 people now, and that's ongoing. So it's kind of one a month at the moment, and it's just grown legs and going out. But anyway, so now villages are growing food for the first time ever, and it's funny because I'm here in Ireland and I'm used to Irish food, Irish cuisine, all. So when I was out there then, I was looking at this village and they had about 3 acres, right, and they were growing and. They're growing their food. Like, I'm not going to expect to go out and find kale and cabbage, So they have like cassava and they have plantain and they've all these lovely tomatoes and some fruits and so on grown. And then there was 1.5 acres of just onions. It's like, what's with all the onions? Like? But it's a huge part of their cuisine. They use it and everything. I was like, okay, that's cool, right? So I was looking and then I was thinking, and obviously, don't forget that there is no chemicals. There's no nothing. This is just hardcore. There's not even tools. This is all hand. This is as basic as you can get in terms of growing. And I was like, okay, so I wonder can we do more with them? We're growing in terms of even though they have water now, and they can grow food. There's other water resilient crops, like millets and so on, and grains that could grow there and cover crops. And I was thinking, so the cookery school should have a farm. And I was thinking, okay, so let's get more land next to the cookery school and get a farm. The government would donate land to us as part of the project, and then we got a call basically going, don't take that land because you'll build this and they'll take it and sell it.
Okay.
They'll kick you out. So that put us back a couple of months. We had to raise money. So we got on the phones, big companies are going, give me money. And now
you're very persuasive.
Yeah, and it did, and we bought the land. And what's good then is when you own land privately, you don't need planning permission. You build what you want when you want. So then we spoke to all these different companies, and we got this great architect firm in Dubai on board, and they designed the whole place. And it's all local, so they grow bamboo and all that. So it's all local materials to build it. Very conscious of that. We had people that wanted to give us. Donate money or send out, a solar panel because it's totally off the grid.
Yeah,
there is no electricity anyway. So they were like, oh, can I give you like 10 solar panels back? I said, no, but you can give me the money because we need to buy it there. It's all about the community. And then what I realized was the food that they're growing in the village, they have excess food for the first time ever. And I was like, and they're able to sell it. So they're setting up these little market stalls on the side of the road now. These are villages that haven't had food. You know what I mean? And now they have excess food from the water. And I was thinking, hang on, the size of the land we have for the school also has a cafe, planned on it, right? I was thinking, that amount of land is probably going to give us 20-30% of the produce we're going to cook in a school. And then I was thinking, hang on, so what if we buy everyone's excess food and set up a fund? Because what happens is when you get to about 10 or 12 years of age, in Gambia, you have to pay for education. So a lot of people don't stay in education after that. There's no real secondary schools. There is schools, but there's no one in it. And I was like, so if we buy everyone's excess food, and it goes in and it puts all our kids into secondary school, and then all that food is teaching their kids to go into the hospitality industry. Hospitality and tourism is the biggest growth sector right across Africa. Kenya has the biggest tourist growth in the world. And what's happening is Europeans, Americans are going out there with expectations of the hospitality industry here in Ireland, and you're not getting it. You're not getting that same standard of service. So that's the whole idea behind Cookery School, was to bring them to a standard and go straight into employment. So then, I'm rabbiting on now because I'm constant. So then we only have space for 50 people in the school, and there's about 3,500 people have applied. And I was like, shit, you can't say, how do you say no? You can't. So the next thing is to, the school is only being built at the moment. Like it's not open, but we're now breaking ground now. But they've already, all the applicants are all in. I was like, shit, you can't say, hey, how do you turn around and say no? It's just something that's life-changing for them. So now we're building a mobile one that we can go to them. They can't come to us, we'll go to them. So and then we've partnered up with hotels and restaurants right across Europe. So they'll do 6 months in the school. They'll do 6 months, obviously paid internships, hotels, restaurants in Africa, in Europe, to get the qualifications in basic cookery in African, which is massively important for me. That is to understand the culture and background to African cuisine, West African cuisine, but also European cuisine, to give them more opportunities to work and travel. so it's ongoing. We did all that in 9 months, and we're
All that in 9 months.
and yeah.
Can I just-
And
from the single idea of building a well.
building a well
Building
and
a
building
well.
a school. But school was the original idea, but then it was like, how do you do it? And that's when we saw there's no water, there's no food, there's no,
Conor, we could talk and
I know,
talk and
sorry.
talk. But I
I'm
really,
rabbing
really
on.
must, just for the very last draining couple of minutes for people, any questions? I'm sure there must be. Right, straight to Ballymckenny Farm over there.
True definition of inspiration, Conor. And I've
Thanks,
known you for a
Vanilla.
long, long
I know, yeah.
And you really are. You're so inspiring. But to get to the point, you have the trilogy. So you have, first and foremost, you have a great business acumen, which is needed. You have the passion for food, and you have the love of agriculture. You have all three in spades, and you're probably one of the only people I know in the food industry. You're quite unique. And I wondered, please, have you ever thought of going into some kind of political area in agriculture in Ireland, and give us all a hand here, because you would be absolutely amazing as an ambassador for food producers.
I really appreciate that, and I have spoke at European level with European parliaments and so on around Ireland and all that, and to me, the biggest frustration, first of all, is that food is political. It should never be. But it's made politics over, like when we think of food globally, there's 4 corporations that actually control what we eat on a global scale. And that's why politics are involved, because of money and grants and so on. And it's trying to get in at a political level. I would love to do it, but I'd also think I'd be so frustrated I'd nearly shoot them all. Because it's so much red tape. But it is needed. You're right, it is needed. And I know there's Minister for Agriculture and so on in Ireland, but food ministers are needed, where it's actual food. Do you know what I mean? And that's what is needed at a political level, because food, as I said, food is political and it shouldn't be. But we have to, if it is political, then we got to work within those boundaries to make that change.
We're all here to help.
Cheers.
You planted the seed now.
You have, actually. That's my next stint, yeah.
Another question there quickly from somebody. Does anybody have a question for Conor? Or yes, great.
Thank you. Sorry, Matt here. Really inspirational. Incredible what you've achieved. Given all your hard work and your focus over the past 9 years, what's your number one focus for 2025?
It's always about food and producers. It is, and the number one focus for me is to get more chefs, because I'm a chef. That's my main conversations are with chefs that are, don't forget, are also buyers. You know what I mean? So it's to get more of them to understand the responsibilities they have. And that's how the Chef's Manifesto, which you mentioned, came up. Now, we work globally on that, but the whole idea was to get chefs involved in the food system and be responsible and stop these habits of going, I want to create a dish that has, these elements on it. And then you're ringing a farmer and going, why haven't you got carrots and whatever time of year? I'm doing this on the menu. Scrap all that shit. Ring your farmer and go, what have you got? What's ready? What are you harvesting? Why are you not harvesting? Like we all know this year, all the problems with waterlogged and, veg stuck in the ground. So it's understanding going, what can we do to help there? Is there something else we can buy? Is there some way we can help you get it out of the ground? Can we buy it in advance? So it's my biggest focus, not only for next year, it's always been that, but getting more and more chefs to understand the responsibilities they have in kitchens. It's not just about making a pretty plate of food. Because a lot of chefs are focused on that, and don't get me wrong, chefs are creative people, and that's what they do, and they create lovely food. But it's about all the back end of it, and going, where did you spend that money, and how did that food get here? And who actually got paid for it? And so it's trying to break that habit, I suppose. Cheers.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, what a way to kick off the Blas weekend. I think you'll all agree. We'll walk out of here skipping with a lot more inspiration in our step. Thank you so much for listening.
Cheers.
Conor, thank you so much, and congratulations again.
Thank you.